So far, we have only acted as if you only imagined the teacher were near you. Now we go one step further and discover the teacher is really present. The disciple must strive in the consciousness so as to realize the presence of the teacher in spirit. Those who envision the nearness of the teacher are not quite wrong. This is better than light-mindedly to forget entirely about the teacher. How am I to understand that? Let us approach this question scientifically. Heaven, or the subtle world, is not far away and certainly not somewhere in the stratosphere. It is very close, imperceptible to the physical senses. It surrounds or permeates the material world in the same way as the soul imbues the body. The subtle world is characterized not so much by the peculiarities of the place as by the beings living there. They are the ones who are staying in your environment. Thus, when we say heaven is near, we mean, above all, the inhabitants of the spiritual spheres are around you. A vivid example how you can imagine the constant presence of subtle beings is given by Jean-Paul Sartre in his famous book, The Chips Are Down. There you find a vivid description of how the souls of the deceased take part in earthly life, by observing, partly sympathetically, partly annoyed, the doings of the incarnated people. To many a living one there follows at every step, like a shadow, a long row of curious ancestors, relatives, former companions, friends or enemies from the realm of the soul. Each one who approaches brings with him many dwellers of the subtle world. This is not obsession, but simply an affinity of auras. We are all surrounded by dwellers of the subtle world, and each approaching one brings his own retinue. Each incarnate man is surrounded by both friends and enemies. Without fail, the many cares and hatreds of former lives gather around one. The scientific basis for the actual presence of the teacher is, there is no void in the universe. Every existing space is filled with subtle beings. Every place on earth is filled with subtle entities. No one should think that the space around us is empty. On the contrary, we can feel with our hearts the presence of invisible beings. Man is constantly surrounded by subtle beings. The approach of fiery and subtle beings is characterized by a tremor of the heart and a sensation of cold or heat. But then, if we are continually surrounded by beings of the subtle world, why do we sense them only occasionally? Why do people only sometimes sense physically the presence of subtle beings? They are surrounded by them, yet they rarely sense them. Here we touch upon a very remarkable fact. Earthly beings feel it when the subtle dwellers contact their consciousness, either because of their own desires or because of affinity of auras. Every human being constantly attracts those subtle beings that correspond to his nature. The subtle world is really striving toward the earthly one, but in full correspondence. Consequently, if people would strive toward evolution, they would attract evolving beings. Friend, light your lamp. Welcome guests will appear. All your thoughts, feelings, words and actions, depending on their quality, attract high or low beings. They realize that each human action attracts concordant dwellers from the supermundane world. They will not accept as true that each of their thoughts evokes a multitude of invisible entities that can be helpful or harmful, depending on their thinking. Every appeal of an embodied spirit evokes a response. It depends upon who asks. One can attract and keep near oneself lofty forces. Also the lowest spirits may settle about oneself. One receives what one wishes. When you have become sufficiently refined and your centers or chakras open up, you will be able to communicate with these invisible beings. A high spirit is in contact with high beings, a low one with those from the lower spheres. People sense equally the breath of the higher world. They are set equally a tremor in heart and body. They understand the voice of an envoy of light. With difficulty, they return to the common earthly state. Such manifestations and the ecstasy of the spirit at contact with a higher being are unforgettable to all alike. People should recall how they were instructed in the subtle world, how luminous beings approached them, and how the growth of their consciousness permitted these instructors to come close. The same thing takes place in the earthly life. A hermit was once asked how he could dwell in continuous silence. He was much surprised and said, "On the contrary, I am never silent, but converse constantly. So many companions visit me." The hermit had drawn so near to the invisible world that it had become entirely perceptible to him. The invisible helpers are always at your side. If they are good, they will provide you with comfort, strength, joy, love, and guidance. When a man asks for help, he feels that there must be something real near him. Many dwellers in the subtle world would like to offer their knowledge, but they are denied the opportunity because of various prejudices and fear. Let us express our gratitude to the invisible saviors. Some call us, others embrace us with a slight breath. Still others fill us with joy or sadness, or whisper advice to us. A fool will say, "I alone do all that." Ignorance makes a man conceited. It would be wiser for him to say, "I apply all my forces, yet I accept gratefully each invisible help." Among the beings from the subtle world that constantly surround you is, of course, above all, your teacher. I am with you. Be assured that I am near you. Thus, we say scientifically correct. The teacher is not present as a physical being on the material plane, but as a spirit, a subtle being on the subtle level of the pyramid of the world. You just have to be aware of his presence. It is useful to train oneself in understanding how close the masters are, just as it is impossible for a person to do without food. He should attach himself to the hierarchy. The teacher does not live far away, but in the spiritual world around you. You cannot see him, but you may feel the proximity of his spirit with your higher, inner senses. That is, as if he were in the next room. The teacher is always in sight, within earshot, and within hailing distance. Your chosen teacher is always with you, even if he is physically absent, and even if he is not incarnated at all on earth at the moment. What a blessing to know your beloved Father, leader, guardian angel, patron saint, or protector is constantly around you. The best remedy, the best weapon, is your understanding of our care. Affirmed in union with us, you will proceed invincibly. Displaying the example of achievement, you will grow to the stature of giants. I would be glad to summon you nearer. Provide the opportunity. My hand is with you in each courageous action. You are not alone. Your longing for a great friend and helper at your side can be fulfilled. Men will ask, "Are you always with us?" We can be, but man must want it. People should think about the proximity of the powers of the higher world. Independent of the conditions of life, these powers are able to stand at the shoulder of every striving spirit,